So I thought I might make a little video here showing something that people might like that maybe they've had somewhere and they haven't made themselves. But I'm gonna make a little burgoo. Burgoo's basically, if you haven't had it, a soup that is about leftovers. So anything that you had left over. Now, when I've had burgoo a million times, but I always thought of it as you had a bunch of stuff in your freezer you wanted to get rid of, or you had a bunch of stuff in your refrigerator you wanted to get rid of, and so you used it. Now, the thing about burgoo is, I think, at least in my opinion, you can see I've already cut up some of this, is that burgoo needs smoked meat. Now, it doesn't have to be a certain kind of smoked meat, but it does need smoked meat. So what I have here is some leftover ribs that were in the freezer. You might say, how do you have ribs left over? Which might be a good point, but usually when I'm doing them, I make enough for about 200. So that's the answer to that question. What I want to do is, and then I've got a little bacon here, so I want to just kind of rough chop this bacon. Now, when you're doing this, be a little careful because bacon has so much fat at this early stage that you may have to drain a little bit of that off. So I just rough chopped this bacon, and I've got it in a pot with some of these ribs. And I'm going to show you how I did these, and you can do this with any kind of meat that you have. If your smoking went good, you can just pull that meat right off the bone. So I kind of cut between the bones, then I'm just pulling this rib meat. And trust me, we ate a ton of them. There's still that much left. So you just kind of pull that meat off the bone. We always save this. We tend to only throw away a ton of leftovers. But occasionally we will put something in the freezer and then pull it back out later on. And that's where these ribs came from. The nice thing about these, you get all that dry rub and everything that you had on them as well. And if you were doing pork, you know, like a pork shoulder or whatever, it'd be the same, or brisket or any of that. You get all the seasonings that you had on it. If you're using ribs, they kind of have that little knuckle in there, so make sure you pull that out, that little, I don't even know what that is, cartilage, I guess. So anyway, then you just kind of rough chop this. Now, this is a good knife safety tip here. When you're doing this, you're going to get this grease on your hands. And when you're using this knife, it's pretty easy when that knife starts to get slick, especially if you're holding it way out here, to end up hacking yourself up. So as you're doing this and your hands get covered in this grease and oil and stuff, make sure you're choking up on this knife blade where you can get it up here farther and control it even though your hands are greasy. So I got that. Put that in the pot. I've got an onion here. Now normally when I show you the onions and stuff, we're always doing like a really fine chop. This I want it to be kind of rough. Burgoo's basically a vegetable soup. People will say, can you make this if you don't have smoked meat of some type? Yeah, it's called vegetable beef soup. So you throw that in there. I have a jalapeno that's been laying around here for a while. I'm gonna throw it in there because that's what this recipe is all about. It's just throwing stuff in. Remember how I showed you the other day, cut it into the strips, leaving the end attached, and then roll it over and cut it the other way. Makes that nice and easy to do, and you don't have to handle it. So I'll throw that in there. I've got a can of tomatoes. I'm not going to put those in there just yet. I want that meat to kind of cook down. Now, the other thing I have here that I happened to find in there was I got some leftover ham. If you're using this, you have to pronounce it this way, ham. Now, this could have been from Christmas. This could have been from Easter. I don't know how long this ham has been in there. But it's going to be perfect for this soup. The problem with it is it was just sitting in there, so more than likely, the outsides of this are pretty freezer burn. So I'm going to go in there and just trim off the outsides of it. Use that for something else, scrapped for the dog or something. And then I took off both ends of it. That even looks like that's a little bit freezer burnt there. So I'll take off those ends. So that's what I got left. So far I'm going pretty good on the meats. I got bacon, ribs, Now I'm gonna have ham. So anyway, you got that just kind of rough chopped up. Throw that in there. Those pieces will break apart. I wouldn't be too awfully worried about those pieces breaking apart. I had a bag of mixed vegetables that we had laying around. Those are frozen too. Again, this is getting rid of everything you have frozen. Throw that in. I'll go ahead and put the tomatoes in. What the heck? I want this video to be 3 hours long. So I put that in there. Now I've got a little bit of chicken stock. Now I say a little bit because that is a little bit. We are practically out of that. But basically what I want to do is make a broth for this soup. This stew, whatever you want to call this. On this burgoo. I also have, let me wash my hands here for a second. What I found in the freezer was a bag of some leftover tomato juice. I don't know if this is tomato juice, tomato puree, whatever. But anyway, I felt like it was a good idea to save it at the time. So I'm going to drop that in there. Oh, you know what it is? It's whole tomatoes. I was wrong. Whole tomatoes. I see them in there. See if I can bring this camera over here a little closer. And I'll show you what I'm doing here. Tilt it a little. Alright, I'm gonna be messing with it for a while evidently. So when you're doing these whole tomatoes, you see those in there, those are awesome, but you kind of want to break those up a little bit. You could chop them. I prefer to just give them a little squeeze and let them go everywhere, make a huge mess. It always seems like a better idea to me. It's really not, but whatever. Okay, so you see I got those down in there. I'll hit this with some salt. Now I did not drain that bacon grease off there. I might regret that later on, but yeah, well. Some pepper. Some garlic powder. Of course, my old standby smoked paprika that I absolutely love and everything. And then I got a few little red pepper flakes here I'll kind of toss in there. Now, the whole key with burgoo, I think, is you can kind of see that going. You got your smoked meat and all that in there. You can see all those goodies down in there. Now, I'm going to add some broth to this just in a second here to make more of like a soup style, but you can see what we've got here. The thing that makes burgoo burgoo. Let me just go ahead and put a little water in there before I show you this. So I've got my little thing here that had the chicken broth in it. I'm gonna pour that in there, a cupful of that. No reason to dirty up another dish when I'm throwing this thing away anyway. Give you an idea of how much liquid I like in this. What I've got here is a little bit of yellow mustard. And I like yellow mustard in this recipe because it adds the flavor, but it also adds a little color to it. And then last, but certainly not least, I have somewhere, which I should have set out, but didn't and didn't think about it. Well, somewhere I have some barbecue sauce. Here we go. What I was looking for there. But I like barbecue sauce in this. It adds a little more twang to it. Gives it a little more flavor. You can use dry mustard if you have dry mustard. But I can tell you, I think dry mustard adds a little bitterness to it. Ever since I was a little 6-month-old baby, I was eating dry mustard thinking it was bitter. And I still think that. Oh, that smells good already. Now, not like any soup needs to cook down for a little while. I might add just a hair more of that barbecue sauce in that. That's probably about 4 or 5 tablespoons, something like that. Half a cup, give or take. You see all that meat in there and all those veggies. And again, this is just cleaning out your freezer. If you have this stuff in your freezer, if you don't, you know, you can dig up some stuff to use for it. Smoke some meat and put in there. Normally, I would put a bay leaf in here. I don't seem to see a bay leaf anywhere, but anyway, that gives you an idea. That's going to be your burgoo. Now that needs to cook down for probably an hour. You can see that
kind of that consistency. This is basically a soup, but it doesn't need to be extremely soupy. I want that about right there. So if that cooks down for a while, and then I need to add just a little bit more liquid to it, I will. But I don't want it to be extremely soupy. So I'm going to try and keep it right about there. So anyway, nice little recipe to use up some things that you have hopefully laying around and looking for something else to do with and didn't want to throw away. And hopefully you enjoy it.